This is a color pencil demonstration. The techniques I'm going to show you today are layering and burnishing, as well as making tints, shades, and tones. So I'm going to start out, my subject is this red ribbon, and I'm using a simple red ribbon because it has very clear highlights and shadows within it that are pretty sharp and distinct. I'm going to start my drawing with just a sketch, and I'm going to use the color of the object. I'm just going to sketch lightly, and I'm only going to draw the top portion of this ribbon to just get things started. So here's the shape that I see. This angles out slightly, and it curves down. This wraps around in the corner, something like that. And then the next ribbon tucks underneath. Next part of the ribbon here. And then it angles down slightly. And this comes out. That tucks under. Okay, so this is enough of the ribbon to show you what I need to about colored pencils. So anytime you're using colored pencils, it's very important that you color consistently. Evenness is really important because colored pencils have a wax consistency that stops it from blending. You can't take your finger or tortilla and smear it and get it to look very good. So the best way to approach colored pencils is to build up the layers. Even if you don't apply an increase in pressure, layering and changing direction in colored pencil will build the color up so that you have a strong, solid value or tone. So this is just the beginning. This is called a basic overlay when your colors are clear and consistent, but not so solid that you can't see the white of the paper. So if you can see the white of the paper through it, it's called basic overlay. And the whiteness showing through is often referred to as being salty. So, right? The bottom half of this, I'm going to apply a little more pressure and a couple more layers. And just keep changing directions a little each time. The reason you change directions is so that the paper fibers can take in more of the color. So I'm going to try it one more way. And each layer, I'm just going to apply a little more pressure. And this lower half, where the color is a bit more bold, this is called burnishing. Now you can burnish with more than one color. You can mix multiple colors in there. If you start with a basic overlay, you can add any color you like. Since we're on the topic, adding colors. If you add black to a color, this is called a shade. So I'm going to lay in a little bit of black right here. And the goal of a shade is to make the color look darker, not to change it to black, and not to have it look like black plus a color. So I have red down first, and now I'm going to add red over it again. I want this to turn into a new color, a darker color. So I'm just going to go over it and see if I can get it to change to look a little shaded or more like a maroon. So there's my darker red. Still looking a little bit more like what I would call red and black, but there it's starting to mix a little better. So this is a shade of a color. Another option is to add white. White is called a tint. When you add a tint to a color, it softens and lightens it. Now when I apply white, typically I just apply a lot of pressure right away because the color just shifts enough to get softer. So you can see a slight change there. I'm going to zoom in a little bit for you. No, I'm unable to zoom and adjust the camera. So if I bring the camera down, you can see the change here between the shade and the tint, the regular color, and the burnished red. So they're all a little bit different. So I'll bring the camera back up so you can see the main areas that we need to work on. So in the ribbon, you can see where the shade would be applied, the tint, and the pure color right through here. So I'm going to draw the top part of this ribbon and maybe a little of this just so you can kind of see how this process goes. To start with, I'm just going to layer a nice even color red all the way across top part of this ribbon. I could map it out and outline everything, but I think I'm just going to keep it really simple for now. And over here where it's slightly darker, I'm just going to add a little bit more pressure and make that just a little lighter or darker red. And as I come across this edge, just fading it out. And then there's a stripe here, tilts a little bit opposite direction. And then on this side, again, another little stripe. It's a little darker. I'm going to leave the white spots just a little lighter to kind of keep things simple here. And on the edge, I see a little rip or cut. So I'm just going to apply my reds right away. And across this edge, this is pretty sharp and clear. I'm going to make this as clear as I can right now. Another thing that's good to know about colored pencils is you can erase them slightly before you go too far. Sometimes if you've burnished quite a bit, you can't go back. But right here in the corner of this ribbon, I see a really small little highlight. And I'm going to pull that back out with my eraser from my pencil. And I'll just go around it a little bit. Well, the best way to get highlights to pop out is to complement them with a shadow or a shade. So this is my dark red area. To make that dark red area a little darker, I'm going to take my black colored pencil and very, very lightly add in this black. Black is so powerful, you really have to be careful where you use it and how you use it. It can really ruin or take over a drawing, especially with colored pencils. So just adding a little bit of this black in here very lightly and right up on the very top edge. So mixing the black in before it's burnished so that the two colors can fuse. And now I'll go back with my red and try just a little different angle. Try and get these colors to blend together. Slightly heavier pressure. Get them to blend together a little bit more. Now as I go across, this highlight kind of has a soft edge to it and it just fades to a highlight, so I'm going to try and keep that happening. I don't want to color too hard and make it a stripe. The following highlight is much more like a stripe. The edges are not as distinct. Now I can always add other colors to my red as well. Like if I feel like the red needs a little bit more of a violet tone, I can add a little blue, and maybe in this shadow blue would help add a little bit more color complexity, make it a little more interesting. So I'll just throw a little blue in there and see how it goes. Doesn't seem to hurt too much. My highlight right here has a little bit of a goldness, looks a little bit yellowy, so I can add a little yellow right into this, kind of perk up my reds. And as long as I'm not applying a heavy amount of pressure, any colors I mix shouldn't really do any damage. Now as I add a little more red, it looks a little bit more exciting. Now if I think that yellow is too strong, which I do, I'm going to pull a little bit out with my eraser. Now I can add my whites. I'm going to go into this and burnish. I'm going to push kind of hard to kind of get these colors to blend together and soften a little bit. And then I'm going to go back with my red, and I want this red to just be a little stronger, so I'm going to apply a lot more pressure as I color across the shade, just to get it to jump a little bit more. And I'm still not quite pleased with this first highlight, so I'm going to erase a little bit more out of it to see if I can get a little more paper white to show. There we go. That's a little better for me. In the next middle section, the best way to accent a highlight is to have a nice, strong, contrasting dark. So I'm going to put a little more pressure on my red here, and I'm actually going to add just a little blue into it. I'm deciding to use blue because blue and red make violets, and red violets are pretty commonly found in anything that has a lot of red, so I'll just add a little more to it, see how it goes. The next area should be highlight in white, so I might actually leave the paper open there. And then this is just a red area. A slightly darker value right next to that highlight. So right about here it's a little darker. I'm just going to add a little more dark to that. And right across the top I want to make sure that there's a kind of a closure to this. So I'm going to add a little more red. I don't want it to look like an outline, but I want it to be clear that that's the edge of the object. The base I'll add in some black, but for now I'm just going to kind of make sure that that's closed off, and then I'm going to add a little more of this darkness down to the bottom. And a little more red. I'm going to burnish with my red, push hard, and mix these colors up. Another tool you can use to burnish is called a blending pencil. Blending pencils have no color to them, and all they do is kind of smear the values together. After you apply a layer of, with the blending pencil though, it's difficult to go back, so kind of have to be sure you're done with a section, and I'm going to call this done. I think the only thing I would like to do is just move a little more of this whiteness out if I can. Get a little more whiteness to show right here, top to bottom. And I think that's pretty good. So for now, that's the top part of the ribbon. I'm going to just clean up this edge a little bit over here by black, and then the last part that I'm going to show you is just the base of the ribbon. So at the bottom of the ribbon there's a shadow below it, and that mostly is a shade. I'm going to fill it in with red first. And now I'm going to take my black color pencil and really make some of these edges clear, like the very corner here needs a little more clarity. Curve does. And then just below the bottom of the ribbon here, slightly darker. Goes all the way through. And I'm not burnishing with my black. I'm not applying that much pressure, but I am applying some pressure. I want it to be sharp. So going back with my red again. Good. And now I'm going to add a little white in a few spots. See if I can get this to work. And I do want to add, I think I'm going to add a little more blue, just to kind of even things out a little bit in here. That black looks like it's just taken over too much for me. And a little more red. So I'm going to go over it with red one more time to just kind of even the color out. Looks a little more like a shadow. And right here on this edge, I want to make sure that edge is nice and sharp. Not outlined, but clear. I'll use my blue to do that. Now I could continue to fuss and fuss and fuss with this forever, but I think the last thing I'm going to do is try and pull a little bit of a highlight out right here with my eraser. It's not exactly matching what I'd like it to, but I'm going to call that good for now. You get the idea. And there's the top and the second part of the ribbon. Now if I went on to this, the following thing the next step for me would be to fill it in with red and then build up my colors. So I created shades with black and a slight tone using blue. I added yellow to warm it up. I used white to lighten it. I left this open, just the white of the paper. And again, I used blue here and here to create some tones to just darken the color or change the color slightly. This ribbon looks pretty good. If I wanted to continue, I would just erase around the edges and keep cleaning it up and adding more and more as I went down. So these are some colored pencil techniques. Burnishing, pressing really hard and building up layers, using shades by adding black, using white colored pencil to create a tint. So let me add those notes here. Shade and tint. There you go. This is coloring, basic overlay, and burnishing, tints and shades.